Hi, I'm Walt Boys. I'm the editor of Eric Flint's Ring of Fire Press, and I'd like to welcome you to the first of 4 panels on marketing for authors. With me is Joy Ward, who is the assistant editor at Ring of Fire Press. And Joy, why don't you talk about your marketing experience?
Okay, well, other than marketing books, because I've been out pushing books for almost 20 years now, I also have about 30 years of experience in psychographics, working with large corporations and how to sell their stuff. And I've had about 20 years as a journalist with a number of publications around the world. And so I've had a lot of experience in pushing writing, either nonfiction or fiction. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something other than, I do interviews sometimes for Galaxy's Edge. And by the way, our other panels that you're going to see me on are interviews with some of the writers like Stephen Barnes and Cecilia Holland. And I'm here to help you try to find out how to market your books to the best of your ability.
Alexi?
My name's Alexi Vandenberg. I am the owner of Rapid Fanboy Marketing and Development. I am also the owner of the Prince of Cats Literary Publications, which is a new wave publisher, as well as the owner of the Bard's Tower Literary Celebrity Experience, which does marketing promotion for authors across the country as the only nationally operating bookstore devoted to the pop culture experience.
Cool. Alexi, you told us when we were getting ready to do this that you have what you call a list of the 7 deadly sins of marketing that authors always commit.
Right. Absolutely. Well, actually, before that, I would love to hear Joy's perspective on that, actually, and then I can get to what I think the 7 deadly sins of marketing are. But Joy.
Yes, sir.
I would love to see in regards to everything, what you think some of the deadliest sins of marketing are, and then we can go back and forth on that.
Well, in general, I think the worst sin that I've ever seen, and this is committed by huge international corporations, it's committed by individual writers, it's committed by politicians running for office, which I've done some of that too, not run, in advising. But the biggest problem I see is that they don't understand who they're marketing to. For example, if you sell dog food, you're probably not going to do a really great job of selling your food if your ads focus on beer. Now, that's not to say...
I would imagine so.
Well, you would think so, but you would be surprised how often I've worked with clients. And these are big clients. These are people with $1 million budgets. And they put all this money in marketing to the wrong people. Or they do what's called, they market to the wrong position in the brain. There's an old book, which I think is just, you've got to read if you want to market anything. And it's called Positioning by Trout and Reese. It is an old book. I doubt that it's in ebooks at all. It's so old. But if you ever want to sell anything, I really, really encourage reading it. It's not a big book. It's not a long book, but it gives you the clues that you need to understand that when you're marketing to someone, and I don't do rational marketing. I don't do, let me give you all the nice things that this is going to do for you. Because that's really not how we ever sell anything. We sell because we market emotionally. And this book really, really talks about that and lays down the groundwork for that. So say, for example, the worst, let me give you a really bad case that I'm going to turn it back over to you. I did a lot of work on liquid supplements. Everybody knows what liquid supplements are. I can't give you brand names. Liquid supplements. And in doing the interviews, because the kind of work that I did was psychographic, or what they call now psychographic research, which is basically heavy duty qualitative. Well, when we went to interview potential customers, turns out that the main competitor for our client was advertising in such a way that they actually were selling our client's product. They didn't say our client's name, but the problem was our client had the position in the mind of this particular, that this big company already had. So every time they would say XYZ, the XYZ they said responded and pointed right back to our client. So it was really nice of that company to spend millions of dollars. That's what they were spending, millions of dollars to advertise for our client. But I noticed that those people are now out of business. The same thing for writers. Sometimes writers want to say, and they get pushed into this, is you've got to write a book like J.R. Ward or this person or that person. The problem is if you try to write a book like their book, they've already written those books. And so when somebody hears about your book, they go, oh, is that the new J.R. Ward book? Or is that the new Butcher book? And people go, no, it's somebody else's. Oh, but you know what? You've just brought up those authors in their minds. So that's the biggest sin I see.
So you would say that I mean, when you talk about that emotional context, you're not talking about something like irrational decision making, like decision calculus.
No, because we don't shop like that. We are emotionally, and I spent decades studying this stuff, and I give all kinds of seminars about how you can't depend on the numbers. Numbers are great for certain things. If you want to know how many pink shirts are sold in a year, your numbers, you got to have those numbers. You want to know where they're sold, numbers. Now, do you want to know why they're sold? What makes people buy them? You can't get that from the numbers. So I listened, and right now, of course, we're in the political season. I listen to some of the guys throwing out their numbers and going, well, this means such and such. They don't know that means anything because they don't do qualitative. They're looking at the numbers and they're taking it from their own experience. The problem is if we don't go out and understand what those people, what our readers are doing or what our consumers are doing, however you want to look at it, we're making it up. We're pulling it out of our nether orifices to be nice. And so I see this all the time. In fact, when we took over Ring of Fire Press, we went out and actually listened to a lot of people, interviewed them and said, you know, what's keeping you from reading? And what we found was very, very useful because it would never, Walt has read pretty much all 11 million words in the Ring of Fire Press world. And I've read a few of them too. And it would never have occurred to us that what was holding back someone else from reading it was something as simple as not knowing the cast of characters. That's why, if you'll notice, a lot of the Ring of Fire Press books now have cast of characters, because we really can't expect our readers to go back and read 10 million words so they can read this one book. That's pretty not good. So that's what I'm talking about, is understanding what are the emotional reasons why people do something. So there you go. That's the, you just got the quickie lesson in all of that. I can bore you all day.
Well, I'm glad to have the quickie lesson.
Yes, because I want to get into your 7 days.
What you were talking about decision calculus is the flip side of what Joy is talking about. You need to, in order to determine where the starting point for your decision calculus is, you need to know what the emotional underpinnings are for where they are, and so you do both of those things.
Interesting.
You do the qualitative research, and the qualitative research gives you the knowledge to put together the quantitative research that answers the questions: what color, how many, who, because you've already answered the question why.
Interesting. Well,
but your 7 deadly sins, tell us about
yes.
them.
Well, see, what happens is that I actually study mostly behavior. And one of the behaviors of the seller is the most important, because the seller actually determines the entire tone of your marketing. Most people think that it is actually the purchaser, and no, it is actually not. One of the things that we actually look at is behavioral stances towards your authors. So for instance, an author who's like, I need you to buy my book, too hard. You know, the guy goes, I hope you buy my book. Too soft. You know, I mean, and I have seen authors do this, and one of the things I do is I do a great deal of training with authors, because I have had authors who have walked up to me and have said to me, you know, here's my book, I hope you read it. And I went, well, talk to me, you sexy bastard, you know, because I'm like, if that's the way, you know, if that's the way it is, I was like, this is a date. I was like, you have to look at this as if it is a date. And the most important way to look at it as if it's a date is, you know, if I walk up and I go, so if I could, you come into my place tonight, right? You know, that's absolutely, you know, that too hard. But if I go, I don't think you'll like me, too soft. So, as you know, and I tell authors, I was like, listen, we are all introverts. I am an introvert. I'm just really good at faking it. And I
Me
was
too.
like, and you know, I was like, listen, you're writers, you want to live in your own world in front of your keyboard and talk to your imaginary friends, which make you money. I get that. But really what we need to do is that we need to have you looking at the world and at your experiential marketplace. And that is the marketplace that we live in right now, especially during, you know, lockdown season. We live in an experiential marketplace. An experiential marketplace is different from what you were describing, in that when I was a kid, if my father wanted to buy a car, the first thing that you would do is that you would go to the dealer, and you used to get all those little books that had the cars and all the nice, you know, all of the nice, you know, cars. And I might be dating myself, it's entirely possible, but you know, it had all the cars and had nice photographs of the cars. And then you'd go back and you have to look at the cars and go, what's the best car I could get for my gas mileage? What's the best car that I could get for this? What's the best car I could get for that, et cetera, et cetera. And that is one way that business is still being done. But more and more, we're actually going to people who are within our community and going, where did you go? Did you like them? Were they cool? Did they make you feel okay? And so on. A classic example of this is our interconnected society is all a universal collective experience. So what we do have is that we have things like, for instance, United Airlines learned the difference between a purchase or value added society and an experiential society, when they took a doctor off of his plane and arrested him and gave his seat to someone else. They discovered that everyone who was on that plane experienced the same thing that man did, and then everyone that they talked to, both through digital or physical mediums, experienced it as well. And there are people who are like, well, we know we're not flying United anymore.
Right.
And that is what happens here. People want to actually know who they're talking to, in terms of who they are reading. So if, for instance, you know, your author is there and he's like, what do you want? You know,
Yes.
it's not going to be helpful. Not going to be helpful. And this actually will delineate into the seven sins. But what happens is that they're going to go, oh, well, yeah, his books might be awesome, but he's kind of a jerk.
Right.
You know, if they walk up to the guy and they go, hey, how you doing? This is my book. It's, you know, it's a book about a rabid dog. I'm calling it Jaws with Paws. You know, at that point, you know, they go, oh, well, let me see what this is about. Guy seems kind of cool. Oh, Jaws with Paws. And the fact is that you don't want them just to buy one book. You want them to opt into being that author's main advocate.
Yeah.
So what you do is that you say to them, you know, gee, buy this book. If you like this book, they will buy another book from you, which is where we actually get into the seven deadly sins, which actually prevent this from happening. you prevent people from advocating for you. And the first one that you would have to say is, of the 7 deadly sins, let's start with my favorite, lust. Okay, very simply this, a lustful, as a 7 deadly sin for marketing, as a writer, lust is, oh, Bobby, who is also an author, got an amazing, amazing deal. He got an amazing deal with his publisher. Why didn't I get that deal? And then there's a slow, especially in social media, unraveling of that author who goes, well, I write better than him and I should have that deal. I'm lusting after that deal. I want that deal. I'm lusting after, they might have more followers than me, or they might have people who interact with them. And rather than actually, realizing that, well, maybe it's because this person is doing something different, and maybe I should look within myself and see how I can get that positive reaction.
Right.
What they do instead is that there is that slow kind of, I want that. And they might do something as simple as this. And I have seen authors do this before at Bard's Tower, where they will go, well, if you like their book, you'll like mine better. I'm like, no, no, come here. Come here. Come talk to Uncle Lex. That
Yes.
is not acceptable. And I have had guys literally, I've had a couple of people who have gone as so far as, and I feel bad because when we do Bard's Tower, it is a big setup with a massive tower with all of the signs on it and so on. And what happens is that you have a lot of people who sit there and they go very simply, oh, I want that setup. And imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Sure.
But then what happens is that you have a guy who will kind of walk out into the aisle and kind of cozy up next to the booth and kind of go, hey, and as they're looking at the books, they'll go, hey, my booth is right over there. You want to have a book? And and I just have to go, okay, because they go, no, we're looking over here. Stop being a creep show. Which is what lust turns you into. Then, and it's something that you have to look at and go, all right, look at things rationally. Everyone, in terms of looking within themselves and looking outside, we see the blooper reel. Everybody else sees the highlight reel.
Right. That's true.
And that's the thing is that you have to realize that, oh, I'm seeing their highlight reel. Meanwhile, I am looking at my blooper reel.
Yeah.
And so we have to look at that and go, okay, let's get some perspective. Let's dial it down. Yes, they have an awesome setup. They might even have something like, wow, they have amazing followers. How can I actually get my followers to follow that behavior?
That's right.
And, and so on. The second one actually follows very closely, which is gluttony.
Well, before you go on to that, can I
Sure.
throw in a point that's going to support your point? Definitely.
Absolutely.
Years ago, when I first started getting out there and pushing, as my first book, Hank, and I would have one book, right, which is always a hard thing to do. Well, what I found is that if I invited other writers in and I actually sold their books, I sold more of mine. So I had a couple of writers who I would just routinely hook up with at the cons. We would sell books together. And let me tell you, we could walk in and walk out with no books left over because she'd be selling mine or she'd be selling hers. Or because then what happened is, because you're right, people want an experience. They come to the con not because they want to experience the selfishness, but because they want to feel part of something.
And this is not only in the con experience, but also on the physical experience as well.
Yes.
If I jump onto, for instance, somebody's social media and go, hey, listen, hey guys, you're all cool with him. You should be cool with me too.
Right.
That is something where they're going to, we're not looking at what drew that person to it. Let's say you
Mhm.
write science fiction and they really like urban fantasy,
Right.
which leads to gluttony, because
Mhm.
gluttony is also when you go, I want that sale.
Mhm.
I need that sale. And so,
Every sale I can get.
Right.
I
yes,
need
which is,
all the sales on the table.
and what happens is that when you have something like that and you look at it, you go, ah, I am going to try and hit every person. First of all, it looks desperate. It looks desperate online. It looks desperate in person.
Yep.
When you say to somebody, gee, they go, I like urban fantasy. And they go, well, this is my science fiction, which is also an urban fantasy. No.
Right.
First of all, people are far more discerning consumers than they have ever been in the past.
Yep.
Mhm.
And we have to remember that they are discerning consumers. And being discerning consumers means that they're going to be very, very careful with what
Mhm.
they look at.
Right.
The second thing is that if you do that and they go, oh, well, this looks like a great science fiction urban fantasy, and there's no fantasy in it except the
Right.
fantasy you just sold the man, um,
Yeah.
then the fact is that what you're going to do very simply is this. You're going to break the covenant between the consumer and the seller.
They're
And
never
there's
going to do
there's
again.
a covenant there, and they will never do it. Now, I mean, there are plenty of people who have, and there are times where I have had people who've gone, I don't read science fiction. And I go, okay, you don't read science fiction. This is what we have that's not science fiction. And they're like, well, I don't read fantasy. I was like, you realize that, we're a genre fiction publisher. And they're
Right.
like, yes. And I go, well, what do you like? And you actually build that rapport where they
Yes.
say to you, oh, well, you know what? I really like spies. And I go, oh, you like spies? Well, you know, I have a book over here. It is science fiction, but it's kind of like James Bond fighting mad scientists.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. No, it is obviously a science fiction book,
Mhm.
but having, you put it in those terms, they begin to understand that, okay, this is something, and you slowly begin to open that door. Because you go, well, it's kind of got some science fiction, because maybe your book, which is Mad Scientists versus James Bond, is something as simple as, okay, James Bond doesn't have, most of the science fiction is on the evil scientist side, and James Bond has a couple of gadgets that, that doesn't work in real life, you know. But if there's an acceptable way of actually coaching it in the terms that the person will want it, then by all means do it. But if you're outright lying to them just
Right.
for the sale, you are actually doing two things. You're going to be damaging your sales in the future, but you're also going to be damaging your sales for everybody that person talks to.
Yep.
Hmm.
Well,
Because
it,
you've lost any integrity that you might have
Yes.
had.
right. And because haven't you found that selling books or reading books or whatever, that it's really relationship, that as
Oh,
a
it's
writer,
always a relationship.
exactly. In my
Mhm.
relationship with
It's
the reader is, if they don't like me, they don't trust me. I mean, there are writers who everybody says are wonderful. I won't read because I don't like them personally. My feeling is there are lots, and this is what most readers think, there are lots and lots of books out there. And if I don't like someone, why give them $6 or $12 or $15 or whatever? Because I don't want to talk to them. Why would I want to read their stuff? And
yeah.
writers get that sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Which then goes back to our third, which is greed.
Yes.
Okay. If somebody buys your book, that is amazing. If somebody buys two of your books, that's amazing. But what happens is that so many people who are writers focus on one thing and one thing alone. sales.
Mhm.
Sales,
Mhm.
sales, sales. And sales are amazing. Trust me, I like sales. I like
Oh, yeah,
sales.
we do too.
You know, however, if
We are
you're
not in, we are not in this for our health.
well, the thing is that more importantly than that, what we have to realize is that if the only thing that we're doing is making our social media or our outreach programs look completely like they are the stock market, buy, 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 buy. If it's essentially, if it looks like, Crazy Eddie's, Crazy
Right.
Eddie's, TV show, you must buy. It's going to be insane. That,
Yes.
in and of itself, is actually going to be removing you from people, because people are going to be like, I'm not going to follow his feed. He's always just
Right.
trying to
Mhm.
shill a book. He's
Right.
trying to shill his book. He's trying to shill his next book. He's trying to shill his third book. What you need to do is again, continue to build your relationship. And it is not a deadly sin to say, hey, listen, I put out a new book.
Right.
But it is a sin to say, buy, 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 and that is the only thing that you're shouting
Yes.
constantly. And that is what needs to be avoided. Is, sometimes I have an author who puts up crazy cat pictures.
Yeah.
He puts up crazy cat pictures and he goes, oh, this is my cat. He's doing crazy stuff today. That's awesome. I have
Yeah.
another author who looked at that and went, yes, that is amazing. I am going to do the same thing. And by the way, what we will do is we will put my book in every picture and then go, hey, this is my crazy cat and my book, which you should buy.
Oh gosh.
Don't
So that didn't go over real well, did it?
look at my face. And, and I say, don't, this is what you should not do. But also, you should also make sure that you are constantly being able to push not only who you are, but what you sell.
Yeah.
So it should be a decent average. So what you do is that you look at it and you go, okay, and this is all self-reflective. If your entire, if your entire Twitter feed or your entire Facebook feed looks like, crazy Eddie, everything must go, then you must realize that that's going to be a very poor way of communicating with people. If you say, hey, listen, guys, I haven't done a self-promotion in a while. I mean, you can even lampshade it.
Right.
Lampshading is fun. I mean, hang a lantern on your problems, my friends. Hang the lantern on your problems. What you should do is you should say, hey, guys, I haven't done a self-promotion in a while. And, and do that. I mean, ironically, at one point, when I was doing a great deal more marketing in terms of just, strategic marketing, I would
Mhm.
sometimes do, Alexi's quote of the week. And, Alexi's quote of the week was just something that I would slap on there and go, that's it. Most of them were funny.
Mhm.
Engaging funny. If sales and marketing is a date, the funny guy gets the girl.
That's right.
Okay, funny guy always gets the girl. So you might look very, very nice, but if you're like, mwah, that's wonderful, great, that you look very pretty. Okay, but if you go, hey, listen, this is what's funny, and the person goes, oh yeah, that is kind of funny,
Mhm.
and it also is something where you are able to target your demographic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because one of the things that you need to realize is that you need to be able to read your demographic. And if all you are doing is going, I must sell my next book,
Right.
you are that is not a relationship. Um, you know, that is you trying to, frankly, it's you trying to get, you know, to get your next quick fix, but it's actually not producing the lasting relationship you need.
Doesn't
Um,
doesn't work in books, doesn't work in major corporations. I
doesn't
can
work
tell you
anywhere.
the ads I see that are running just like that, where they're spending millions of dollars and they're doing exactly what you're saying not to do. And I promise you, I know what they're making, and they're not making the money back. So
Mm.
you're absolutely right.
Which then leads us to the other one, which is sloth, which is the exact opposite problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sloth being essentially you, I'm not going to market there. Why am I going to market there? Or it's also too timid, where they're not going to buy my book. You have, you know, again, it is the presentation of yourself. And if you go, you know, I had a guy who walked up to me and said once, he's like, "This is my book. It's not very good." And I'm like, "That's then why are you giving it to me?"
That was my question.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, because I want you to market it." And I was like, "Okay, come here. First, come here. Let's have a conversation, kid." And I say, the first thing is that, guys, you have to realize that part of this is all confidence. It's all confidence. If, you know, if you walk up and go, "They're never going to buy my book." No, they're not. You know, the thing is that the guy who said, "I'm never going to make it there," and the guy who said, "I'm going to make it there," were both correct.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They're both correct. And that's the thing. And you know what? You're not going to make every sale. You're not going to actually connect with every reader. It's impossible. We have New York Times bestsellers that I consult with on a daily basis who
Mm-hmm.
don't make every reader. There are people who are New York Times bestsellers who I have had readers go, "I hate that guy."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh yeah.
and what you have to do is you have to go, okay. And that's, you know, that's part of that. But you also have to be able to put your work in on this. Now, this is something that you are going to have to work at. It's not going to
Mm-hmm.
come quickly. Far too many times I have authors who sit there and go, "By the way, I wrote my book." I'm like, "Awesome." And they go, "I'm publishing my book." It's like, "Also awesome." And then a month later, they're like, "No one's buying it." I'm like, "Okay, have you talked about it? Have you done interviews? Have you gone out and sought to build a relationship with the people who you want to buy your book?" No. You know, because what happens is that this is the best way to describe this is the, if I built it, they will come.
Right. Right.
As much as I loved that movie, and I watched that movie with my uncle and cried like a sissy llama, you know, that movie is bad because
Right.
it tells you, if they build it, you know, if I write it, they will come. No, no, they will not. You need to actually be involved in this. It is not the field of dreams. It is, you know, it is something that is going to take long and hard work. It should
Mm-hmm.
not absorb your entire thing because, again, that goes back to greed, where we have people who are like, "Well, I market 28 hours of a day." I'm like, "Well, there are 24 hours in a day, and how do you write?" "Well, I'm selling the book." The best marketing you have for your first book
Mm-hmm.
is your second book,
That's right.
Yep.
You're right.
you know. And
The
then,
problem, of course, is that what hangs people into sloth is that we're all a bunch of introverts, and it's easier to not do it because
yes, it
you
is.
might get rejected.
And I might get rejected, you know, I might get rejected by, you know, I might get rejected by the girl. I might get rejected for the next business, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Next business conference I get. It happens. Grow up, put on your big boy pants, and deal with it. And also, by the way, it's something where you're going to have to go in, and you're also going to have to, you're going to have to balance this out with the next deadly sin, which is pride. Pride in authors is death.
Mm-hmm.
I love all of the authors that I work with like they were my own bastard stepchildren. However, I will put it this way. Very simply, every author out there goes through the phase of, I've written my book. This is awesome. My book is selling. That's awesome. I'm awesome. I have arrived. And the instant that you get there, you know, I want to, and I have seen many a young author do it, and I want to go, no, you know, no, don't do that, because the instant you do that, there within lies death. Because you go, I've arrived. I am
Right.
an author. I am an author. Author, you know, and then they turn from that to, don't you know who I am? I'm an author, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, what they're technically doing is they're putting up a barrier that they don't even realize they're putting up.
Yep.
The
Yep.
second thing is that when they do not get the feedback that they are expecting, which is, you're an author? Really? Really? When they don't get that, it goes into, don't you know who I am? Which is, you know, if they're asking, no, they don't, and you're embarrassing yourself. And second of all, what you need to do is that you need to be able to rein that in. You know, if underconfidence is a sin, overconfidence is just as much of a sin. And
Mm-hmm.
pride is one that actually can do just as much too much of this. And I have seen that before, where I've had I had a guy in the booth who once literally sat there and went, I write books about ninjas and zombies. And I'm like, awesome. And he goes, they're great ninjas and zombies. I was like, okay. I was like, give me the pitch. He's like, ninjas and zombies. I was like, that's not a pitch, that's a word. Give me, come on, talk to me. You know, and he's like, ninjas and zombies with dinosaurs. I'm like, those are still just,
It's getting worse.
this is not help, you know. I was like, you know, and then he goes like this, he goes, well, you just don't get it. I was like, no, because those are 3 words. I know what those words are. I know what they mean, but I do not understand the context in which, how you are trying to tell me why I should read this.
Right.
Okay, it has ninjas. Are they good ninjas? Are they bad ninjas? Are they ninjas, like, are they Japanese ninjas? Are they American ninjas? You know, do they have the guy with the mullet? I want to know this. You know, these are questions that inquiring minds want to know. And also that pride is something where in interpersonal relationships makes you do things like, gee, I'm an author. All the chicks dig me. No, you know, and I have said that on occasion to an author, like, that's very nice. Yes, I'm sure that, you know, girls, you're both pretty. Please, you know, let's focus on selling books rather than increasing our Twitter accounts, unless it is actually for the purpose of marketing, because you're not marketing your books at that point. You're marketing yourself for later on at BarCon, and that's
Right.
not, you know.
Yep.
You know, and then it goes down to wrath. We are living in a highly polarized society.
Yes.
A highly polarized society. And a society where one tweet, one comment, one thing that you say on a, you know, in a, you know, on Facebook, one thing, you know, if you say, you know what? I do not like, I don't like unicorns.
Right.
Okay? And unicorns suck, and whoever writes about unicorns, they're stupid too.
Yeah.
The instant you do that, well, anybody who goes, wait a minute, I kind of like unicorns.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, what's the problem with unicorns? I like unicorns, and my daughter likes unicorns, and my wife likes unicorns. Doing something like that immediately is a turnoff because you are isolating people who otherwise might be your friend.
Right.
And that is not helpful. The second thing is that when you do something like that, if you say something inflammatory, there are people who are going to attack you on it, and then you're going to attack them back, and vice versa. And the instant that happens, you go, you know what? This is going to turn into a row, and no one wants to see that. It is a battle on social media is something that nobody wants to see. And along with that, this is also why you should not engage people who are criticizing your work. That's
Right.
tough. That's tough. And I know that. Some of these people put their hearts and their souls and their, hard-earned tears into these books. And for somebody to go on and go, this book kind of sucks. I understand that. And you want to go to that guy and go, you know what? Forget you, pal. You can't. Because the instant you do that, you're creating, let him have his piece.
Mm-hmm.
I have had people who have said, Star Wars is now ruining my childhood. Okay, well then maybe you should not watch the new Star Wars. But, but the instant you go, you're wrong, that they go, no, I'm not. This is why I'm not wrong.
Exactly.
And the immediate that you do that, you're going to go into a complete rabbit hole of which neither of you is going to ever escape. It's a gravity well.
Yes.
You're not going to get out of it. It's black. It's the black hole complete with the two little robots in it. And you're never getting out. So Raph, you have to remember that your books are your product.
Mm-hmm.
Your name is your brand.
Mm-hmm.
And you need that brand to actually stand up for what it represents. And the instant that you start saying, well, gee, people who don't like purple unicorns are stupid.
Right.
Okay. The instant that you do that, you're turning off people, and somebody's going to even say, you know what, I like purple unicorns, but this guy's kind of a jerk about it. Wow.
Yeah.
And this kind of thing hangs around absolutely bloody forever. There's an author that I know who said something very, very stupid 50 years ago. Not 15 years ago, 50 years ago.
50.
And every so often, about every 5 years, somebody dredges it up and throws it at him again.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so utterly sorry that he ever did that.
Of course.
Well, and also there's a point about branding people don't understand, because branding is very badly misunderstood in general. To have a brand means that you are inspiring some level of emotion. Now, for some people, if you're lucky, they really love your brand, they glom onto it, and woo, it's their brand now. But to have that kind of a brand, you've also got to have other people who don't like your brand. It's like you're saying, you write about unicorns. Well, I'm okay with unicorns, but maybe I don't like those kinds of unicorns. That doesn't mean anything about your writing. All it means is that I don't read unicorns.
They don't read unicorns. Exactly.
Right. I read this was my first book, which is a dog book. It's definitely about dogs. If you don't like dogs, don't go look at it. Matter of fact, I usually tell people that, and I have for a long time, because what I found is that the people who liked the book were dog people. The people who didn't like the book, there weren't that many of them, were I was bitten as a child, or there was something else about dogs they just hated. Well, if you know that, don't pick up the book. And in fact, as a person managing that brand, I would say, you know what? I know some great books with cats. Let's go find a great book with a cat, because there's lots of them. And that's what,
Absolutely.
so writers need to understand, not everybody's going to like your crap. I'm sorry, but that's what it is to some people. And that's okay.
Well,
it just means that you've been very clear about what you've done.
and this is also where I say to people, I was like, keep your opinions on things outside of your, keep things outside of your purview really to yourself. That's what your personal page is for. That's what you need that for. And what you also need to do is that you also need to realize that in doing so, that how can I put this nicely? Shut up and write.
Yeah.
Very simply, it's that. There's no nice way to put it. Shut up and write. Okay, that's awesome. You want to advocate for the Flat Earth Society. That's wonderful. If you want to talk about the wonders of the Flat Earth Society, that is also wonderful. If you're going to talk about the Flat Earth Society ad nauseum and say, you must like the Flat Earth Society, excuse me.
Yes.
What happens is that in doing so, wonderful, you're not actually telling people about your brand. I joke about this very often that, there can only be one writer or entertainer who occupies the position of I advocate, excuse me, for this position. So, when you have somebody who's like, well, gee, I'm the guy who is the anti-Second Amendment writer. Right. Wonderful. You have one of them. Everybody else is aping that one. So if somebody has that position, you're not taking that hill from them. And you're not taking it anytime soon. So don't do it. Finally, I would say, your last thing is really envy. And we're an envious lot. As writers, we're envious creatures. And we sit there, we go, I write better than that guy. I don't know why I don't know why his book is selling better than mine. So you know what? Again, back to wrath. I'm going to say that because my book is better than his. No. Don't do this.
Just no. Yes.
Just no. Don't do this. Don't envy other writers. Don't sit there and go, you know what? I'm going to go into the bookstore and organize it because his books are and I have seen authors do this, and I'm like, you realize this is insane. And they're like, yeah, but I want to have more square footage on the bookcase. So my books are going to be, I'm going to make sure my books are positioned this way. I was like, okay, that they're going to change that. And he's, and then they go like, well, that guy has an end cap. Why does he have an end cap? Because his publisher paid for an end cap.
That's right.
But I should have an end cap. Well, you need to negotiate that out with your publisher who is making those business decisions with you.
Right.
Hopefully. If they say, well, you want an end cap, and they go, no, well then that is their business decision. Maybe you should talk to your agent, or you talk to your, whomever is managing you, and make sure that they have that. And also, this is one of those things where with envy, you would also have to look back at yourself and go, okay, is this really the hill I want to die on?
Right.
Is this the hill I want to die on, or is it not the hill I want to die on? If it's not the hill I want to die on, then let's move away from the hill.
Right.
In any case, those are the 7 deadly sins of
Those are
marketing.
great.
And
Those are exceptionally good,
They are.
and
They're
they're exceptionally good when you think about them as a writer,
excellent. Mm-hmm.
because part of the problem that writers commit, most of them, is because they're overcompensating for being hide under the rock introverts.
well, we all overcompensate for our weaknesses. That is the nature of humanity. Which, by the way, is, I think writers are more in touch with humanity than they realize. They just fail to realize that their imaginary friends are reflecting parts of human nature that are both within themselves and within society at large.
Good
So
point.
Right.
what they do is they fail to realize, like, oh, I'm super insecure. So is everybody else. So is everybody else. I mean, the most the only people who are not are sociopaths who are like, no, I'm awesome all the time.
Right. We don't know of anybody like that, but yes.
And you have to realize that that's a person who's not able to reflect and learn from their mistakes. Everyone's made these mistakes in the past. I mean, there are marketing mistakes that every person makes, and what you do is you go, oh, well, that didn't work. Let's reflect upon it, and why didn't it work, and let's go from there.
Right. Absolutely. But to your point of that, everybody. When I was younger, my mother taught me, because she was very good at dealing with people. And she said, look, you're looking around and thinking everybody's watching you. They aren't. They're thinking, what does everybody else think about me? What do they think about who I am, not who you are? So when you're interacting with people, just forget yourself, because most people aren't going to notice you anyway. They're only going to notice you in regards to how you react to them.
That is correct.
The same thing of what you're saying is that people have to give up that whole, everybody's watching me. I'm so afraid.
Oh yeah.
There's a writer, science fiction, space opera, in fact, that I'm on his email list, and I don't know why, because the only thing he puts out on his email list is, I have a new book, buy it. Here's a new book, buy it. I don't know anything about the person at all. I don't know what kind of stuff he likes. I don't know what he reads. I don't know anything about this person other than about every Tuesday he comes out, grabs me by the throat and says, buy my new book.
Buy my book. Yeah.
Right. Which gets really old. I mean,
Of course.
if you had a friend that called you up every other day and said, I need money to go to lunch. Can you take me to lunch? You might actually like this person, and you might like having lunch with them, but that's going to get really old after the first month or two,
Very quickly.
Probably sooner, depending on who you are. But no, the best way I ever found personally to sell my book was after Hank was published. I ended up getting a gig in the dark old days of blogging, before everybody blogged, right? And I did a blog called Dogsters for Love of Dog blog. Well, remember, it was a dog book. I never talked about my book. Granted, somewhere on the blog, I didn't put it up, but the people did, that had a picture of the book. I mean, it was like teeny tiny little picture, right? That's it. I talked about everybody else's books, dog books. I talked about dog issues. I talked about dog politics, everything else in the world. I sold a lot more books then, because they got to know me.
Absolutely.
And they went, oh, well, she thinks that. Maybe I want to read her book. Maybe I don't. If there was somebody that I took off on because of their bad politics involving dogs, probably didn't want to read my book. That was okay. But
Absolutely.
yeah, it's in other words, make your stuff about something bigger than the words you're putting on a page.
Absolutely.
You want to have a relationship with the reader, not make them feel like they owe you lunch every other day.
That's not okay.
Yeah, otherwise you wind up being wimpy.
And obnoxious.
I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Yes, it's kind of like that. So no, those are great. I love that. And I admit willingly that I will probably steal some of that because that's
Well.
really, really well said. Thank you very much.
Well,
I hope our viewers have learned a lot today.
thievery is the sincerest form of flattery. So I
That's right.
thank you.
You know what we ought to do, Alexi, is to have the people who are watching this panel write in and ask for a copy of the 7 Deadly Sins to put up right behind their monitor, right where they look up to figure out what they're going to write next.
Well, first let's ask, do you have that in writing?
I do have them in writing. I do have them in writing. And
Well,
usually in a more succinct form than what I have. But
probably don't need to have it as much in depth because
Yeah.
you know. But no, I just wanted to make sure you had it before he put people out there going, I want it, and bugging you. So.
oh, no worries, no worries. Well, thank you. I mean, you know, this has been awesome.
Thank
guys.
you.
Absolutely, thank you. And
Thank you.
thank all our viewers for showing up.
Yes, thank you guys.
Yeah.
This has been
Take good
amazing.
care.
And enjoy Ring of Fire Con.